So I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all live and work. For me, that's the Ghana people of the Adelaide Plains. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and also extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across the country. So thanks for everyone for joining us here today. We're really delighted to have some of the team from the Australian Biocommons here to tell us more about launching and managing Nextflow workflows with the Seqera service. So I'm just going to hand it straight over to Ziad, who's going to take us away. Ziad? Oh, and sorry, I forgot to mention, everyone, if you could hold your questions till the end or just pop them into the chat. And I think there'll be a few speakers, and then can have kind of Q&A and discussion at the end. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. In this talk, I'll be talking about launching the Australian Nextflow Seqera Service. But in addition to my talk, we have two different use cases, Magda from QUT and Marek from WeHi, that will talk about their use case and on using the Seqera service during our pilot project. Before I start, I would like to highlight that Australian Biocommons support Australian life science researchers by providing them to access digital infrastructure at community scale. This includes software and hardware platforms. We are nationally funded. Our services are fully subsidized for Australian researchers, and we also have training and support solutions. And the way we usually work, we engage with different life science communities that can focus on specific methods like genomics or single-cell omics, or consortia that focus on like maybe doing different methods and investigating different problems, but focus on specific species. We also work with data generation facilities. And the main aim of these engagements is to identify common problems that these communities face. Then from our side, we try to find solutions to avoid these problems or at least mitigate the impacts of them. And in one of our engagement with bioinformatics workflow community, we found out that the majority of the researchers are using different workflow management systems like Nextflow, SnakeMake, and the top, but they also in many situations they use the tools individually but apply them sequentially, to get the desired outputs. And the majority of the users reuse and develop workflows. And through this engagement, we found out that there are different needs for this community. Part of it is overcoming all the challenges that come with command lines, especially for non-technical users, which generally speaking, they struggle with using the command line, especially with accessing HPCs and utilizing like clusters and the cloud services. But also there is a lot of interest in facilitating the collaborations, sharing resources, make them available for everyone in an easy way where maybe not everyone has to do the same process and deploy, install everything. And there are also some difficulties in monitoring the executions of workflows, especially like large-scale workflows that run on different nodes in compute infrastructure. So there were a lot of interest to improve and facilitate all these issues. And that was the motivation behind establishing the Australian Nextflow Seqera Service, which we do it with a lot of our partners, including NCI, POSI, and Seqera, the company that developed Nextflow and developed the Seqera platform. And in simple words, the users individually or within communities can access the service, that's a web platform. And on the service, they will have access to different workspaces. On these workspaces, they can deploy their workflows, different compute infrastructure that can be cloud services or on-premises HPCs or national HPCs or even institutional HPCs like what you get access to in the university. And through these workspaces, the users can run and monitor the executions of different Nextflow workflows and all these different infrastructure. There are many features that make it easier for researchers to use the platform. That include an user-friendly web interface to launch and run the Nextflow workflows. Allows you to have live monitoring for different jobs that are running in parallel, simply in one centralized point, which is a web platform. Has also an API to make it easier to automate the execution of workflows. The platform also allow launching Jupyter notebooks and R studios, so you can interact with the data directly from the platform, and you can also explore the data you have on different storage systems that you can access from the platform. We started working on the service in the past 2 years, and we started with a pilot project to assess, the service and try to, find all the operational elements we need to make the service in production level. And now the service is in production level since September this year. And during the pilot project, we hosted 33 different groups from 16 different institutions. We have around 80 users, and these users managed to run more than 4,000 workflows that launched more than 300,000 different jobs and different infrastructure. And here are different examples of the users we have. You would see universities, research organizations, medical research institutes, and in this talk, we'll have 2 different use cases that will explain to you about their utilization of the service in the past 2 years. And from this point, I will just hand over to Marek to talk about the use case at WeHi.
Okay, thank you, Syed. Great. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're using Seqera Platform at the WeHi Advanced Genomics facility. So our previous solution was something called Pipeline Pilot, and this is a data flow processing tool. It was originally designed to be an ETL tool, but found use in a few different scientific areas. We were using it for the multiplexing and sequencing analysis for Illumina. It did have some support for that, but we found ultimately it was very limited in terms of the bioinformatics tools that it supported. We couldn't easily plug it into our HPC. We'd have to reinstall our whole instance. So it was just limited to a smallish VM. It also had a very limited development environment, so we were kind of forced to build workflows in this GUI workflow builder with this a proprietary language called Pilot Script that a lot of the code base was in. We did consider alternatives such as Galaxy, but in March last year, we got access to Seqera Platform. It was called Nextflow Tower back then through Bioinformaticians, and since then we've successfully managed to replace the legacy pipeline pilot system with Seqera Platform. So it's been very exciting for us. We went through a number of different requirements, and we needed to make sure that Seqera Platform could meet these requirements. So first we needed a GUI for launching and monitoring workflows. This is because the lab techs needed to have a very easy to use system. They're not bioinformaticians, they're not too familiar with the command line, so it needed to be really easy. And so this was provided to us via a web interface by Bioinformaticians to the Seqera Platform. We also needed to be able to run workflows on our local HPC, and this is provided via the Tower agent that's able to communicate with the WeHi network. We also needed to have minimal time to port our workflows. It was only me porting all this legacy code over, so it needed to be something that was quite easy, and Nextflow is a modern workflow building language, so it was great to have that as a backend for Seqera. Then we also needed it to be expandable. We wanted to be able to build on workflows from the community. And so it was really great that we would be able to get access to things like Epitome, who makes the Oxford Nanopore pipelines, as well as NF Core, which is a great source of community pipelines. Then we also need to be able to interact with our on-premise database. We had all sorts of primer and CRISPR library information. And so the way that we solved this was using the Nextflow NFSQL plugin. And that was really great because it enabled us to directly query our database straight from Nextflow. And then we also needed to have convenient viewing of reports, so multi-QC for our sequencing runs, as well as custom reports. It was really easy to just dump an HTML file of, for instance, all the CRISPR libraries, and then that can be viewed directly on platform, making it really easy to view those reports. Next, we needed data provenance. So this is provided via the dashboard in Seqera Platform, and we also use the execution reports so that we have some copies for later down the road. So Seqera was able to meet all of these requirements, which was great. This is how we've got it set up at WeHi. We log into the Seqera Platform workspace hosted by Biocommons. We usually interact with it via the web browser. You can also track jobs via the command line. And then there's also an SDK and API, which we might actually end up using. And we keep all of our code in our GitHub. So we have a WeHi Genomics R&D, and then it's really easy to just import all of our workflows. We can easily just add a new pipeline and link that from the GitHub. We also run some Epitome pipelines for nanopore data, and NF Core is always nice to have. So the way that the jobs actually run on the WeHi side is that they communicate with this Nextflow Tower agent. We can launch this via on-demand, and I'll show you that in the next slide. And this is able to kick off HPC jobs and then also interact with the storage system. So the caveats of this is this agent system the agent has to be kept alive. Previously, this had to be done via the command line, but we were able to figure out a way around that. And so the lab techs don't need to use the command line at all for this service, which is great. There's a lack of direct access to the WeHi file system, so we can't like browse files or anything. It's probably would be difficult due to security considerations, but we were able to make it work with some pre-configured paths, and then the users would just paste their run path into that argument. We also need to consider privacy of metadata, so we need to make sure that the metadata from like sample IDs and stuff wasn't exposing anything that could be patient identifiers or anything like that. So we just had to be careful to look at our workflows to make sure that was all kept private. And then we also needed to do some setup of some shared environments to make it just easier for people to process their runs. So Michael Milton from WeHi Research Computing set up this system where we can log on to on-demand and launch things like Jupyter and RStudio, but we can also launch the Tower agent. So we just paste in our token that we get from our Seqera Platform login, and then we just click launch, and then it runs a job for 2 weeks, and then we don't have to keep fiddling with the command line, making sure that it's still running. We can easily see if it's running, and we can easily restart it if it gets stuck or anything like that. So that the Tower agent on demand has been great. And I think Michael's put that code online if other institutes want to use that. In terms of what we actually run on the platform, the Illumina stuff this is our kind of legacy workflows from, well, I wouldn't call it legacy workflows, but it's the stuff we ported from Pipeline Pilot. So it's demultiplexing, QC, things like that. And we've been building out some nanopore workflows as well, using some from Epitome and also some custom demultiplexing pipelines, as well as data transfer tools. So this is a little bit of an overview of our Illumina workflows. We use it for demultiplexing and QC reports. We have customized demultiplexing programs, as well as read counting for CRISPR. We also built out a toolkit using SeqKit. So a lot of these bioinformatics tools that we often run on the command line and we're very used to, the lab techs, we've given them access to this via like a Nextflow wrapper that allows them to run some of these tools like fetching sequences from reads, counting indexes and things like that, to make it really easy for them to troubleshoot runs, which they have to do quite a bit. And that's worked really well. And we've gotten great feedback that they're able to process and troubleshoot runs without needing bioinformatics support, which is excellent. And multi-QC reports are always very useful to be able to view directly from platform. This was a custom workflow that we developed for Nanopore for data transfer. You might be thinking, data transfer, why do you need a Nextflow pipeline for that? Shouldn't it just be like copying files? Well, it was actually really complicated because the runs were really huge. They're a terabyte per run over. And the instrument LAN was completely isolated. So we kind of needed to figure out ways to actually transfer it over to the network. And so we developed this PROM transfer tool. So there was an automation part that wasn't Nextflow, but then we had a PROM transfer tool that we could take data from the storage area, from the staging area, and then copy it into the lab allocations. And so we were able to create this whole workflow without needing to go drop into the command line at all. It would either be automated or run via the GUI. The only thing that actually required the command line was to just double check that everything's okay and then just delete the original run from the sequencing PC. So it was great to be able to make that GUI based. And this is something that we're actively kind of working on moving into Seqera Platform. So we've been running a plasmid sequencing service at WeHi. It's been quite popular. We've been sequenced over 2,000 plasmids. So we use this Epitome pipeline that generates a consensus sequence for our researchers' plasmid constructs. And it's supported by 2 wet lab arrays and 2 bioinformatics arrays. And they run these Nextflow pipelines with automations and stuff on the command line. But if we can move it to Nextflow, we can move it to Seqera Platform to allow the lab techs to run the pipeline themselves. That would reduce the bioinformatics time required. So we're looking into that now, and I think that will be quite successful. So some stats, we've done hundreds of runs. So Seqera Platform has been a very nice workhorse for the genomics facility over the last year. And just to thank contributors. So Julie and Michael from WeHi Research Computing and Syed for helping us get set up, as well as everyone from the WeHi Genomics facility, especially Stephen, Leila and Ina. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. Maybe we move to Magda for your presentation.
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm Magda. I'm a bioinformatician in QSIP, which is a Queensland-based non-profit organization that supports mainly universities across Queensland in anything related to data. So as a bioinformatician, I wanted to tell you first for a bit of context where I use Nextflow, and I use it in all the tasks I need to do for the company. So we provide short consultations to researchers, including PhD students. And I'm currently supervising a project with a PhD student, and I recommended Nextflow to her immediately, together with Seqera Service. So she's been actively using that. Then I also do some research projects, and I use Nextflow pipelines in those as well. And some part of my job is the actual pipeline development, and Nextflow is also my preferred language for it. So whenever I can, I choose NF Core pipelines. They're great. They are very structured. They're modular. They have great support on Slack channel. So the two pipelines I use myself is Sarek and RNA-seq. So I use Sarek, for example, to identify variants from whole exome sequencing in over 200 lymphoma samples. Then RNA-seq, I compared expression patterns in technical replicates from some mouse samples. Then as I mentioned before, I'm supervising a project for a PhD student, and she's been using text profiler and AmpliSeq for some taxonomic profiling of gut microbiome. I also use non-NF Core pipelines, and the main one for me is NextNeoPy, which is a Nextflow-based pipeline that predicts new antigens from raw data. So it's a very, very robust pipeline. It has a lot of steps. It starts with RNA-seq and whole exome sequencing data, for example, and it goes through the entire process of preprocessing the data, of calling mutations, extracting peptides, predicting binding affinity, and prioritizing them. And finally, the pipeline that I also use, that I developed, I tested, so I was involved in developing it, together with Biocommons support, is ONT-VISC, which is an ONT-based viral screening for biosecurity pipeline. So it also has several modules. It's not as big as the NextNeoPy. So how I use Australian Nextflow Seqera Service. So for the neoepitope predictions, I'll start with this. I use it on HPC. So this is how I perform all the tasks. I only use HPC, and I use 4 HPC infrastructures. So one is Banya, which is provided by University of Queensland. And then I use 3 others, Lyra from QUT, Cetonix from POSI, and Gadi from NCI. So I use NextNeoPy pipeline only on Banya, and the rest of the HPCs I tested the ONT-VISC pipeline on them. So the way I use Seqera Service in each of these HPCs is a little bit different. So on some of them, I can launch and monitor the pipeline. So on Cetonix and Gadi, I can use the full functionality of the Seqera service. However, on Banya and Lyra, I can only monitor the execution of the pipeline because of some strict rules, guidelines, terms of service that these HPCs have. So Banya doesn't allow persistent agents. That's one example. And either of them, Banya or Lyra, they don't allow external agents back connecting to HPC. So because of this reason, I only use I only use Seqera service for monitoring the pipelines. But it's either way, it's been a great help. I'll show you in a second why. So first of all, it's a very easy workflow monitoring. So I have a lot of patients data that I have to process. So right now I have around 200 pediatric cancer patients that I need to identify neoantigens for. So every day I start my morning by logging into Seqera service and looking at the results of the workflow runs. So as you can see on this slide, it's very easy. You can immediately see which ones succeeded, which are still running, which are failed. You can filter by status or by name, however it's convenient for you. Then when you go inside, you can see exactly which command was used to generate to launch the workflow. You can check where it was launched and also which tasks, if it failed, for example, or you can, or even when it's still running, you can see at which point it's at. So and it's very convenient because you just provide your email and you log in. You don't have to go through all the HPC logging. So it's very easy, quick check where your pipeline's at. The other thing is troubleshooting. So you cannot troubleshoot everything because it doesn't. So Seqera service doesn't display the logs particular to the task, but it does display the overall log from the pipeline. So it really depends on what the tool that you're currently running, if what it returned as an error. But a lot of the things you can already say by just looking at the error report. So by that main log from the pipeline. So here we can see which task failed and what was the command it ran with, what's the command exit status. You can judge a lot by that. And then it does print the part of the log from the moment the error started. So here you can see this job was killed so here it doesn't say that, but it was killed with out of memory error. And you can simply it provides you as well, even though it doesn't print all the logs, you can it does give you the work directory, so you can go and troubleshoot more and check what went wrong in more details using the path that it gave you. So it's much easier. And also it does display all the parameters for you and all the configuration. So everything in Nextflow pipelines, there are several places where the configuration is taken from. So what's great is that Seqera service just displays all of them as a summary, what exactly was used to run your pipeline. And yeah, I think I've mentioned before that you have the hash of the work directory, so you can just go and monitor and check what went wrong very easily. And this is the functionality that I don't use very often because I I mainly use Seqera Service to monitor the workflows, and I cannot run the Power Agent, for example. But if you are able to do that, and you're able to fully benefit from it, then I think Mark mentioned as well, you get the reports. So you are able to, through a simple click on the tab and loading, for example, an HTML file, you can quickly see how your like just your results. So it's very convenient for things like multi-user reports, as Mark mentioned. That's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magda. So I'll just highlight the key features that both Magda and Marek mentioned. First of all, the easy utilization of different workflows that can be hosted online on GitHub repositories, private or public, as long as you have actual access to them, or they can be also hosted directly on the infrastructure. And you can, like for large number of workflows, like the ones hosted on NF Core, you can just utilize them very smoothly on the platform. Another thing is the easy way to launch and run the workflows, but also monitoring the executions. As you see, from just single web interface, you would be able to access all the logs very easily and navigate between different processes and accessing the logs and all the files, including the comments of these processes. And it's an easy way to do a collaboration on these resources, because we'll have a workspace. Maybe once you will configure the workflows and the compute infrastructures, then it becomes available for everyone within the same workspace, so they don't need to reinstall or redeploy all these resources. There are different ways you can access the service as an Australian researcher. One of them is to access a personal workspace, and this is what you will get directly after you log into the service. And you can log into the service using your email address that's affiliated to an Australian institute. If you have any problem with the login, just reach out to us and we will make it easy for you from there. And this is a personal workspace limited for one user, but you can access an organization workspace where we create for you, and this is more like to allow collaboration between multiple users, so you can add more users to it, other resources, then these resources become available to all the users within this workspace. Now, after utilizing the organization workspace for a year for testing, if you have more than 3 users, you will need to convert to an organization where you would have a whole organization on the platform that has no limitations on the users or the workspaces. However, it comes on annual subscription fees to cover the license of the organization. Apart from that, the Australian Biocommons will fully subsidize the cost of the platform license, the cost of the license for the Australian Biocommons organization that hosts all the users in the testing period. We also fully subsidize the cost of the deployment on the infrastructure, including also all the resources we have for the deployment team, but also the support team that supports the users on the platform itself. Please, you can scan the QR code and it will take you to the service information. But also, I encourage you to take a look at the service list under the Australian Biocommons website, and you will get access to all the services we have that might be helpful for you. Thank you so much. And we're happy to take some of your questions.
Thanks, Ziad. I think we had a few questions in the chat. Might as well get started on them. So first is Seqera licensed software? What happens when the license expires or isn't renewed?
Yep. So from the user's perspective, the only access mode that require a license from the user side is the having an organization on the platform. Otherwise, talking about the simple case where for the platform itself and for the first 2 different use cases I mentioned, the Seqera Service is the licensed software, but the Australian Biocommons fully subsidize the cost of the license. That includes, as I mentioned, the license of the platform itself, but also we subsidize another organization that's the main organization, the Australian Biocommons, where we host all the users for testing and for testing and also for the organization workspace. I hope this responds to the question. Okay, and what happens if the license expires or is not renewed? Well, the Australian Bioinformatics is committed to support the service now till 26, till the end of 26, I believe. The accurate date is on the service web pages. The aim is actually to keep supporting the service, and as long as we have use cases and a lot of people using the service, utilizing, and that demonstrate the impact of the service, I think we'll commit to support the service as long as we exist. As long as I mentioned it's demonstrated that the impact of the service on those same researchers.
100%. I mean, it's going to be easier to justify that cost if you have a lot of people using it, right? Cool. So next question. So I think this one came up during Merrick's talk, if I remember correctly. So how did your IT feel about running Nextflow Tower agent on your HPC? Any issues during installation, user login, security, port access, etc.?
Yeah, so Tower Agent actually runs within at the user level, so it has just the permissions of that user to be able to launch jobs on the HPC. I'm not sure what kind of pre-configuration was required to make sure that that worked, because yeah, that was set up for us by Research Computing. Maybe Zayat has some comments there.
Yeah, well, I would say maybe the smoothest way we have with our use cases is actually the one at WeHi, where they used open on demand, so actually to avoid the command line. From my experience with working with different groups, the process of installing the Tower agent is to some extent smooth. You usually just download the software online, and we need 2 parameters, and you will be able to run it because we run the agent from the cluster. Then when it's running on the cluster, we'll communicate with the platform outside. We never had a problem with the security with utilizing the agent, especially as I mentioned, you run the agent from inside the HPC. But some people have some concerns because you're running a third-party software on the HPC, but we never had a problem with it. So there is another way you could actually access also, or like connect to different compute infrastructures through the SSH keys, but this is a bit more not trickier, but there are some concerns about sharing your SSH keys with a third party as well. That's why we usually go with the Tower Agent solution, as it seems to us it's more secure.
Ziad, I saw on one of your last slides, there was something for training and events, I think. Could you comment on do you run training specifically for this, or is that more generally training from Biocommons?
We do not, at this stage, we do not have a specific training for the service itself, but we do different training events for Nextflow. And with the service itself, we usually, when we host a group, we go with them with a demo on the service, and we try to help them, during the process to onboard them on the service, and even help them, to configure all their resources at the beginning, so it helps them to operate. We do have some plans to start to do, more training maybe around the services we have.
Yeah, it's just possibly something that us as ABACBS can maybe do a better job of sharing and getting to the community as well, right? Just going back to, so you said you do some training around Nextflow. Is that more about just generally utilizing pipelines? I guess what kind of level is that targeted at? Or
we usually do the training events around Nextflow for development of Nextflow workflows, but we go in the basics. So this is like hello Nextflow, just in a simple way. You have 2 processes, for example, taking the data from the input, passing it to multiple processes, give the output, do some configurations, just to allow the users, to start using Nextflow. Then maybe they can work on this more.
But it's geared towards developing a Nextflow pipeline rather than using it. Would that be fair?
I would say yes, and also that's the majority of the workflows I was involved in. I'm not sure if I think most of the time this is the case. Yeah, getting around just the development of Nextflow.
Thank you. Just another question there in the chat. Thanks for the talks. Is the primary difference between running on a HPC directly and through Seqera the use of a GUI interface?
I would say not only this one. but that's one of the main benefits. And I'll also say that maybe the majority of the features that you will get are actually more like Nextflow features that you will still get them by running on, just directly through the command line. On the platform, you will be able actually to interact with the data easier than the command lines, because you could export it in different resources. And on the platform, you will be able to run from the same point on different infrastructures easily. You will also be able to run RStudio, Jupyter Notebooks as well to interact with the data. Does the platform give you some other features that you do not get directly with Nextflow? One of them, which I know, is accessing different S3 buckets that needs different credentials. I think in Nextflow you will be limited, to have your input and output on the same bucket or with the same credentials. But if you have different storages, the platform can help you with this. These are the main maybe differences that come to my mind as well, in addition to the GUI side. Also the automation as well. I think the automation you will get from the platform is a bit different than the automation you can get just directly from Nextflow.
Another one here. Do you need anything different when building your workflows to enable the GUI to work, like NF Core style, or will any Nextflow pipeline work?
Generally speaking, you can actually run the workflow directly, but you could do extra things that will make it easier for you. One of the main things, for example, is the Nextflow schema file, which is a JSON file you have with the workflow that describes all the parameters. So if you have this file implemented in the right way, when you try to launch this workflow from the web portal, you will actually get a user interface, because the platform will take this Nextflow schema and, based on all the fields inside this file, will generate a user interface that you can use for the input. Now, if you don't have it, you still have, you can provide the parameters in different way, but it's less like user friendly than what you will get from this one. That's one of the things. You also, if you have some different reports you want to visualize on the platform, you have a config file that you say, well, okay, I want, for example, this multi-QC file with this name, and that's the path for it. So when you run it on the platform will just take this information and give you the multi-QC with the same as what Marek showed you on his slides. But also, I'm not sure if the other speakers have any comment as well on these questions. Please feel free to step in.
Just a quick comment. If you do use the NF Core template, it'll be compatible like out of the box with Seqera Platform. But yeah, the only thing we need to generate was a JSON file and the YAML file that will link to the reports.
Oh, thanks, Mag. Let us think of an example there. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to discuss or bring up, or from the speakers today, anything else you'd like to mention? Oh, another question. Does the server allow mix and match between HPC and commercial cloud in the same workflow?
Yes, in general, I would say we managed to have a use case. Virtually, we managed to have a use case with AGRF where we run some of the processes on the HPC, some of them on the cloud. It was not super smooth. We had to override some of the configurations and port them in different ways on the platform. But we managed actually to have, for example, input on the HPC, output on S3 in a different way. As far as I remember, we managed to run different processes in different HPCs. One of the main challenges we had at that time was we needed to make sure that both processes, for example, uses either Docker or Singularity. We couldn't mix. And one of the problems we had on the HPC, we had to use Singularity. On AWS, we had to use Docker. And that was a problem because it still does not support having like two different container management systems on the processes. But otherwise, it worked to have, the execution in different place for different tasks of the workflow. Sorry, processes.
Great. Well, I think unless we have any other late-breaking questions, we might wrap it up there. But again, just a thanks all the speakers, everyone from Australian Biocommons, and particularly Marek and Magda as well, who volunteered their time. Thanks very much. It was very interesting and really useful to be able to see all of that. And yeah, thanks to everyone at Biocommons for providing this information and all the links and everything. And yeah, thanks.